you.
We have a special guest. What's his name?
This is Pip.
Pip.
He actually is in the movie.
He's in the movie?
In that scene where they throw the metal out of the car and they stop to get it, there's a little white dog and someone walking down the street at night, and it's Pippi and me. It was the last night of shooting.
I think he's got, is it a she? Or
It's a he.
It's a he. I think he's got a future. I
Yeah.
really do. You want to sit here?
Sure.
Wow. Wow, right? There's a lot to chew on in that film, for sure. I'm going to start with sort of a basic question. I read up on it, as you would expect, and I read that it took quite a long time to actually make this production happen. It was because the book on which it's based came out in 2003,
Yeah, at least, 14 years ago.
and I think they tried to jump on it pretty quickly, but there were various different issues. So I'm curious for us all.
The various issues, a movie based on a book written by a woman, a screenplay written by a woman called The Wife.
Yeah, yeah. So what I heard,
Took 14 years to make.
I heard, and this amazes me. Honestly, it does amaze me that every big star, a male star in Hollywood, did not want to play the Jonathan Pryce part. Is that?
Couldn't find an American who would be in a movie called The Wife.
What is the matter with us, guys? Come on, we got to get with it.
Well, I think it took a great, Jonathan Pryce is an amazing stage actor as well as a film actor, and he's done, of course, things on television, and he knew the value of, he knew how great the role was and how challenging it was. I was lucky.
That did shock me. I don't know why it did shock me, but it shocked me that no one else was going to take that part. When did you get involved?
I got involved about 5 years ago. I read the script, and I said, yes, I'll put my name on it. And then there were various, they didn't have a director at the time. And but I stuck with it. And then about 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years, Bjorn Runge, I met Bjorn. They sent him over to meet me in New York. I had the final say as to whether, he had become our director. And as I said before, it's his first English movie. And he's a very accomplished Swedish theater director, writer, movie director, writer. And there was just something about him that I instinctively thought he would be wonderful to work with. And he was incredible to work with.
What about the role attracted you?
The challenge of it. I'd never been through this emotional territory before. And I went into the preparation with a lot of questions because I was afraid that every woman would jump up and say, just leave him.
Yeah.
But in answering the question as to why doesn't she leave him, that whole process working together around the table before we started, that I think in collaboration with the writer, director, and with Jonathan, I think we were able to create a very complex, I think very authentic marriage.
Because in a sense, he does love her. I mean, Joe really does love her. I just have to tell you that watching it and seeing it the second time, I thought of my mother's generation. And I knew women like Joan. I can remember women like Joan who were the smartest in the room, but didn't say that much. They were in the background. The husbands were doing more of the talking, but you were looking at them going, there's a lot going on there. And I would like to just say this about your performance. I think it was Stella Adler who said acting is reacting. This is a masterclass, I think, her performance, because it isn't just about you having the speeches. I mean, Jonathan Pryce is fantastic. but I used to love Spencer Tracy because no matter what he could be, somebody else was talking, you're still looking at Tracy for how he reacted. It was when he wasn't talking that was almost more interesting, the expressions. And I felt that with your performance, that we're watching you, but you're not necessarily talking, you're reacting.
Right.
It's wonderful. Congratulations. It really is fabulous. So, Jonathan Pryce, you had never worked with him before?
No.
And was it, because he is such a wonderful actor, was it a treat?
I just was lucky enough to see his Shylock at the in the Merchant of Venice at the Old Globe Theater, which was revelatory. He was astounding.
Yeah.
So I went backstage. He said, "Hi. Guess we're going to work together." Yeah. But it was wonderful to see him in that.
And it was a smooth working relationship. Did you sort of fall into?
Yeah. Well, we spent a week at a table in the Dakota Hotel in Glasgow. I had to go through with a fine-tooth comb from the beginning to the end, asking questions, saying, "I don't believe this, blah, 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 blah. What about this? What's this?" So that was my process, and people would come in and out, Jonathan, Max Irons,
Yeah.
Annie.
Yeah.
And I forget your question.
No, just what it was like to work with Jonathan.
Oh, with
Pryce.
Jonathan. Yeah, well, the first scene we shot was the scene in bed.
Oh my God.
That was the first scene.
Yeah.
So I felt, okay, we're two old pros here. Just do it.
Did you nail it on the first take?
Pretty much.
That didn't come out right. Daughter Annie Stark. How about her? And of course, I'm such a genius. I'm watching it going, my God, that actress is wonderful. And she looks so much like Glenn. How did we do it? And then I said, oh, introducing Annie Stark. That does sound familiar. So she gets an introducing credit. That must be a thrill for you.
It's a huge thrill.
And
I'm so proud of her.
You should be, because she was great. And the camera loves her. And I thought to myself, well, you're playing the same character.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, she makes us understand the character you play. So I was wondering whether or not you guys were sitting across the table talking about the character.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I said to her very early on, you're the one who establishes the character.
Yeah.
What you two do in the beginning, then you see us 40 years hence. So, and what I love is when people are talking about the movie, they talk about those scenes, not saying old, young, just, Joan and Joe. So I think what they did was really, really wonderful. And we talked about her shyness,
Mm-hmm.
that was very important, and her absolute need to write. And Annie really established that.
I loved that scene with Elizabeth McGovern, because
I know.
that's a pretty important scene.
It's a very crucial
Yeah.
scene, yes.
A writer needs to be read.
And Elizabeth
honey.
is so wonderful.
Oh, but I mean, was
Yeah.
she based on someone specific? Had she sort of seemed?
I don't know.
Yeah, I've no idea too. So I read something that you said about how you feel that you are at the top of your game, which certainly you are, but it made me wonder about how you feel practicing your craft at this stage of your life versus how you might have felt 30 years ago doing it. Has it changed for you? Just approach
Yeah, it
the way you
has. If
perform?
it hadn't, I'd be
Yeah,
in
it'd be a
deep
little
shit.
odd if it hadn't. But how do you describe that?
Well, I mean, maybe the best way to describe it is there's two roles that I've revisited. And I did an off-Broadway play called Albert Nobbs, and 30 years later, we made it into a movie. So I played that character early on in my career, and then I guess it was 2011, we shot it, 2012 it came out. And then I also did it with Sunset Boulevard. Did that in the 90s, and then came back 22 years later to do it again. And both times I was totally different than I was originally. I had all those years of craft under my belt. I'd lived a lot more of life, and I just had a different take on both those characters. So I just, an actor being an actress is a great gift. You should only get better if you think about it, because you're doing more and more exploration of the human condition and these fascinating characters. And I've had the privilege of playing a lot of fascinating characters, and I think it's added to my craft and to my knowledge of. I don't have any kind of formula, but I still get as excited and as challenged by the prospect of playing what I think is an interesting character.
I'm assuming Annie has taken classes, or is it all just God-given? I asked this for a reason, which is
She really has not taken. She worked with a kind of a coach for a while. She'd kill me if I said this, but it's like I said, you've got to take classes, and you've got to take classes. She said, but they all are so bad. I don't care if they're bad. It doesn't matter what's. Anyway. Well, yeah. I mean, I think she was 7 weeks old when we went over to France to do Dangerous Liaisons. Her life has been on sets and backstage. I think it's a shock when you finally are trying to do it yourself and you realize how hard it is. But the thing that I've observed the most, that I worried about, is you need to have incredible resilience. Yeah. You need to have kind of a very fierce feeling that it's something you can do. You have to have this kind of almost unreasonable belief in what you think you can do, but you have to have a lot of resilience, and Annie does have that.
And she's got the fire. She wants it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I was going to get to was, if she wasn't a class, I would say, well, you've probably met a lot of other aspiring young actors and actresses, and I'm sure people come up to you and say, can you give, what's your advice, what's your counsel to a 25-year-old who wants to be an actor, an actress? What do you tell them? What advice do you give them?
I don't know what I'd tell a 25-year-old. I tell a young person, get a good liberal arts education. And they go, really? I say, really? I think it's very good to be curious about things other than what you do.
Yeah.
I think it really adds to what you do.
Yeah.
I have no advice. It's just tough, and you have to act, and wherever you can act and get a job and learn your craft, I think probably would be the main advice.
Yeah.
Learn your craft. It's a craft.
So you do the stage and you do screen acting. You go back and forth. You always return to the stage. It's where you started. It's sort of a hackneyed question, but I love it anyway. They're obviously very different disciplines. What's your perspective on that, and do you have a preference? Is it one you like more than the other, screen versus stage acting?
Because I started in stage, the easy answer is it really is stage, mainly because I think it's the closest you get to the pure craft. Yeah. You don't have an editor. Yeah. You don't have a camera set up. You don't know how you're going to be edited. You're your own editor, and it's you and your fellow actors, and then the final ingredient is the audience. And I always think of the audience as my collaborator. So, and I think with a good piece of writing, it's about discovery. Every night you go out thinking that hopefully you'll get deeper and deeper into the part and discover more and more. It's kind of endless. And so that's thrilling.
Every performance is different.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, yeah. Yeah. In rehearsal, you kind of, you set up the perimeters, and then there are always those magic nights where everything is floating. It's really amazing. You feel total. You're absolutely one with the audience, because I have a feeling in theater that you actually set up an energy field, and that's what kind of behind what flings performances out to the very back row. But it's physics.
It must also be nice to be able to act a story in sequence. I've always thought for a screen actor, there's very often you're not doing scenes in sequence, and so you have to. It's a chunk of time, and you have to get into that mode in that moment.
Yes, it can be very tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to wait for the next setup, for the next. It's a very, very particular kind of discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're rarely out of sequence, you really have to do the work to know exactly where you are when you put everything together.
Well, this movie is so resonant right now with the Me Too movement and the gender inequality and pay inequality and all those things that we're finally waking up to. And I think I saw that your daughter had said at one point, I hope men can react to this and get the message. Well, I certainly got the message. Personally, other guys out, did you get the message? I got the message.
From the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I still think we'd like to say, well, now it's all fine, but it's not. And it even gets to the point where the whole thing about mansplaining, do you know about mansplaining? That's when a husband will talk over a wife. Oh, my wife's trying to say something, and I'll interrupt her. But not every man does it, but some do, and I have been guilty of it. And I'm watching this, and I'm going, mansplaining! Oh, God, I got to stop with that. Oh. But, this is a really important movie for that reason, because we're ready. We need to hear it. We need to be aware of this. It did remind me of my parents' generation so much.
Yeah.
And these amazing women who, at the end of their lives, were kind of like, they're just as bright.
A lot of them outlive their husbands, too.
Yeah. Oh, they certainly outlive their husbands, but it's sort of like their potential was not met.
Well, it was certainly my mom.
Yeah.
Who never went to college. She married my dad. They both were 18 when they got married. He went into the war, came out, went through medical school, became a doctor. He was a brilliant man, highly educated. She never graduated from high school, though she was the most well-read woman I've ever met. And she basically sublimated herself to my father her whole life. And at the end of her life, even though she, you could say, well, you did this, you did this, she said, I really feel like I haven't accomplished anything. And to me, that was tragic, because it's one thing to be a good mother, and to be a good wife, but to feel fulfilled as a human being, that might be the most important thing of all.
So I agree with you. That moment when he makes the speech and he says, it's all due to my wife. It's this moment of, and I was really interested in it, because in a way I was saying, wow, he's finally, admitting it and saying, it's not me, it's her. And the anger, because the one thing that you'd said was, don't talk about me. And he just doesn't listen. But it was almost, for me, I don't know about the rest of the audience, but it was almost a surprise at how mad you got.
To me, well, she's complicit. She's been complicit in this arrangement that they had. Though I really honestly think they didn't discuss it. I mean, because it was too fragile. I think she's as angry with herself at that moment as she is with him. And it comes almost unbearable to breathe, to just get out of the room. I think it's really the moment.
I don't like to be looked at. I don't like, it's part of it. But also he's exposing this.
Yeah, but he also says that I'm his muse. Again.
Yeah, that's not.
But
quite
I
the
mean,
same thing.
I don't think it'd be a rare human being who could admit to what the truth was in that arena.
Yeah.
But it, you know, he knows what he's saying. She knows what he's saying, and it's unbearable. I think for both of them. Yeah.
It's an amazing scene. Okay, folks, we're going to open it up to you guys. We're going to take a few more questions. I ask that you wait till the microphone is handed to you before you start. So everybody, who's got the mic? Who's got the mic? Okay, come on down. We have a question right over here from Claire. God bless Claire. You're the best. This is a family theater.
So I was curious if there was significance with the recurring boxes and squares. Like above their bed in Connecticut, the artwork had all these boxes, and then it was in the hotel room, and even her scarf had some boxes. So I don't know if that was her being kept in a little box or.
It's very interesting. I've
That's
never heard
deep.
of that, but you'd have to ask the designer, production designer. But that's very nice that you saw that.
Gotta watch it again. Is that mic working? Is that on? Okay, good. Come on, folks, more questions? Oh, we got one back here. Hold on. We get them. There we go.
Hi, my message is really how the movie wrapped up. So we talked about inequality in today's environment, and you're sort of rooting for her throughout the whole movie. And at the end, she discloses to her son, I'm going to be honest with you, but then turns to Christian Slater and says basically, don't tell that story or I'll see you in court. So she keeps the secret. There's truth, but then there's keeping the secret. There's a lot of symbolism there, and you're kind of frustrated, but you're happy, and she doesn't want to ruin her husband's legacy, and I get that. But what's your take on how they decided to wrap up the movie?
My take is, and that there was a lot of discussion whether to even have Christian in that scene. I always wanted him in that scene. I think you need to wrap up his character as well. She doesn't give him the power to tell her story. I think that's what that's about. I think she's not, she knows his ambition. She knows it's not it's a lot more than just telling the story for him. And she doesn't trust him, as she's told him. And so she's not going to tell something like that to him. I think it's hers to tell, however she chooses to tell. And I would like to think that eventually it would come out. But she's not going to give it to him.
It's a private truth for now, is the way
I was just curious about editing. There was that scene at the end where you're leaving, you're totally aggravated, you're done. And from an editing standpoint, there's a quick turnaround where all of a sudden he's rubbing your shoulders, he gets you back into that mode, and finally, whether it was he obviously had a real heart attack, but you showed the true love that you had for him. So I was just curious how you were able to emotionally handle those emotions, and was it different scenes in different moments in time?
No, that was one scene. That was a very difficult scene to shoot. But I love that moment where she just said, I'm going to leave you, and then says, I just want to get out of this dress. I mean, I could really relate to that. And then he starts unzipping and thinks it's back, but it's not. When he's dying, basically, and says, do you love me? I didn't know. It was a horrible moment. You see me in Profile, basically. It was I didn't know how to act it. You want to say how unfair, how dare you ask me at this moment if I love you? But of course the answer is yes, she does love him, and she's going to tell him as he's dying that she's going to love him, but he says, you're such a good liar, how will I ever know? And the thing is, I think he's a man who never believed that he was worth her love. And so it's a
Yeah.
really kind of a heartbreaking moment, because even though she says, I love you, he says, I don't know if I can believe you, because he never has. He, from the very beginning, when he says, how can you be with me if I'm a hack? And that's what he's been fighting against his whole life. You know, he's not the one with the gift. So it's a very complicated moment, but I tell you, it was really hard, because I literally, the first time he said it, was like, and then I said, does he have to ask me that? Like, oh my God.
But it
But
also,
it felt, I've kind of learned, when I feel that uncomfortable, it's probably the way the character is feeling. Really hard, complex, uncomfortable moment. But yes, of course, she does love him. But,
But so the question I would have is, would she still have left him if he'd survived?
I think she would have, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
was out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, couple more questions. Oh my goodness, we're having a. Okay, hold on. We're having a lack of coordination here. It's okay. Just go ahead with that. We'll get to you.
I was wondering about the evolution from the novel to the different versions of the script.
There were 13. Oh, no, that's sorry, I'm doing a play with Jane, and there have been 13 versions of the play. My mind just jumped. I think, I don't know, that's between, Jane Anderson and Meg Wolitzer for a long time. And then the thing that interested me, or that I was really kind of wanted to happen, is in the book, it has this wonderful ironic sense of humor. It almost sometimes borders on satire. But the guy, Joe in the book, is just a down and out asshole. And to me, that was uninteresting to do on film. So I think we worked on making Joe, if he's not liked all the time, at least have some, something that's not just he was a insensitive bad guy. More complex than that.
Oh man, let's go over there. Thank you. Pamela. Okay.
Hi. Last weekend in the Wall Street Journal, they did a little piece that said Glenn Close's 10 most favorite things.
Oh, right.
And one of them was the knife from Fatal Attraction. Hanging on the wall. On a mantle, you had some other mementos of your life and pieces of memory. What would you take from The Wife? If you could take a most favorite memory to put on your mantle or to hang on the wall.
Take from The Wife. Well, mean like a prop?
Or a memento.
A memento. I don't know. The walnut. Annie gave Bjorn a gold walnut, a golden walnut. Yeah, the walnut's cool. Let's see. I don't have any mementos. Great memories. I had a wonderful driver, Martin. He had a little fox terrier called Muffy. And I said, well, what sex is Muffy? And he said, he's a boy. And I said, Muffy? That's interesting. Okay. So when I was leaving, I wanted to give Muffy a present. And I was writing on the card, and I just happened to say to Martin, how do you spell Muffy? And he said, Murphy. Glaswegian for Murphy is Muffy.
God, I love it.
So funny.
How was Glasgow?
Glasgow is fabulous. And we thought it was going to be cold and rainy and awful, and it wasn't. It was wonderful. The people are really, really sweet and welcoming. It's a beautiful city. They know how to party.
Yeah.
They know how to drink.
Yeah, honey, let's go.
But
Let's get
I
tickets.
did get my I did develop a taste for Scotch. I have to say.
Just then? Just over there?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to work on that. Okay, couple more questions, and then we got to wrap it up. Here's one here. Right over here.
Thank you. Thinking about this movie and thinking about Fatal Attraction, it seems like you always seem to culminate at the end, and you were fascinated with the last scene in this and Fatal Attraction. I think you reinvented, if I'm correct.
The last scene in Fatal Attraction,
Didn't you?
when I'm
cha-
killed in the bathtub,
Didn't you change? Didn't you change that? Didn't you come up?
I
with that?
didn't change it.
I read that somewhere.
No, I didn't want to change it.
I thought you created that. No.
No, I mean, originally she killed herself, which I thought was how she would end.
Right.
So it
So,
was difficult to change it for me.
So do you feel like the end is the culmination of the movies? Because most of the time you seem to like have your most brilliant moment at the end.
The end. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I think, I suppose a good screenplay leaves the audience with a strong image at the end to take out with them, out of the theater. But as far as what I've done, I don't know. Maybe thinking of Dangerous Liaisons, that last scene where she's taking off her makeup. No, I've never thought of that before, so I don't know.
But most movies have culminate. There's a culmination. There's a moment of resolution, and I still think about that scene in the bathtub when she comes out of the bathtub. Thanks a lot for that.
That was shot in the Unitarian Church here.
Well, I know.
Yeah,
Do you know my wife and I looked at the house where it was shot, and we passed.
on
We
Guard
just thought,
Hill.
no, I don't think we're going to
On
do it.
Guard.
Yeah, we looked at it. I was like, oh,
The
great.
bunny was
No,
boiled
thank you.
on Guard Hill Road.
Okay, one more. We're going to do one more. And over here, this gentleman.
The last scene on the plane when you're writing in the notebook and then there's a blank page, is that you're starting to write again and then the part of the blank page, is that symbolic of something, or what's the meaning of that?
I think you're absolutely right. She turns the page, and it's blank, and then she is thinking of what she's going to write next.
It's a great ending.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of endings, I do want to ask Glenn to tell one more anecdote, which she told upstairs, and she actually first told 2 years ago at an event we did called Playing for the Playhouse. Did any of you show up at that? Yeah. And if you don't mind, it's shameless self-promotion, but your memory of the Bedford Playhouse as a young person?
Oh, where I said that in the.
I
oh,
know,
oh,
but
you
there's
want me
some
to
people
repeat it?
here who
Oh.
didn't hear it.
Well, I came here probably the first time, when I was 4, 5, 6, because we lived in backcountry Greenwich, and we would come over to the Playhouse. There was this one big theater, and you'd see newsreels, and then you would see cartoon, and then you would see the film. And for us, it was a Disney film, one of the great, it's the time of the great classic Disney animated features. Or Old Yeller, or Littlest Outlaw. So this theater is very much part of my creative life. My imagination was fed in this theater from a very early age, and I have a lot of emotional memories of
And
the Bedford Playhouse.
And here we are.
And here we
And
are.
here we
as
are.
beautiful as it is again.
How about that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Glenn Close. Love
Thank
the
you.
movie. he is so like he has no stage fright or anything.